11. Terror on the first week of school. More than a dozen children shot, 2 killed as a gunman takes aim at a packed Catholic school mass. Heartbroken families and grieving community members gathering tonight, asking a question this country cannot seem to answer: how to make it stop.
It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler.
Hey guys, Tyler here. Before I begin the topic of this video, I first want to state that my heart goes out to the parents of the recent shooting, my heart goes out to the victims of the shootings, and my heart goes out to the dead kids that actually died because of the shooting. I just simply cannot possibly imagine being a parent, listening to that particular news that your kid might have been injured or killed at a Catholic school because of that particular asshole who shot those kids down. Not to mention, I just simply cannot imagine the amount of trauma that the kids had to face from here on out ever since that particular event. It's just like a lot of stuff that's been going on in my mind when I first heard about that. However, at the same time, I cannot necessarily say I'm surprised. Now, the main reason why I'm saying I'm not necessarily surprised about this is largely because ever since Columbine, I've been increasingly desensitized to this kind of news almost every single time something like this happens. Because when I first heard about what happened at Columbine, it was pretty shocking because everybody back then thought this kind of stuff would not actually occur. But gradually, over a period of time, it became more and more and more commonplace to hear this kind of stuff. So the question then becomes, what exactly was the motivation behind what recently happened? In a leaked video that was done directly by the shooter, he had many magazines and guns that had many kind of messages that show what kind of ideologies he subscribed to. Now, in the barrel of such gun, he written down that Israel must fall like a phoenix we rise from the ashes. This one says, kill Donald Trump, rip and tear. When I read the anti-Semitic stuff for the first time, I just simply could not help but to notice that there has been an increase of Jew hatred as of lately. And I feel very saddened about that, because Jews make up a small portion of the world's population, yet they continuously get like a lot of hate simply by being Jewish. And so I'm kind of curious, how much is it that we have to do as a society to actually lower rates of anti-Semitic behavior? Because if I'm not mistaken, it's actually Middle Eastern countries that actually are funding Middle Eastern studies, and because of that particular funding, I would say the main reason why people probably have such anti-Semitic views is because of that foreign donation money coming from those Middle Eastern countries. And so maybe that's why many people nowadays, they just tend to hate Jews. So perhaps one way to actually combat anti-Semitism is to reject any sort of foreign donations underneath some sort of Middle Eastern studies. That way more and more people don't have such prejudice against other people simply because of their background. Now on Twitter, Jen Sasuke said the following things: prayer is not freaking enough. Prayer does not end school shootings. Prayer does not make parents feel safe sending their kids to school. Prayer does not bring these kids back. Enough with the thoughts and prayers. Now, Caroline Libet did a response to what she had to say.
I saw the comments of my predecessor, Ms. Psaki, and frankly, I think they're incredibly insensitive and disrespectful to the tens of millions of Americans of faith across this country who believe in the power of prayer, who believe that prayer works, and who believe that in a time of mourning like this, when beautiful young children were killed while praying in a church, it's utterly disrespectful to deride the power of prayer in this country, and it's disrespectful to the millions of Americans of faith. And I would encourage Ms. Psaki to pray for these families themselves.
Gavin Newsom, in response to the video, stated these children were literally praying as they got shot at. When I see discourse like this, I'm reminded about the concept of the pen versus the sword. Like, is the pen much more mightier than the sword? Or like in the movie that's actually called Yojimbo, where basically it's like the concept but in reverse, where essentially it is the sword versus the gun. To better understand the Democratic position about the whole entire issue about stance versus prayer, you guys need to understand what kind of philosophical underpinnings that they have for that particular belief system, and it's something that I believe myself, by the way. Now, the whole entire ordeal, the underpinning about it, lies heavily on something that is known as the problem of evil. Why would God actually allow other people to suffer? Like, if he's all powerful, how can he cannot possibly prevent it if it's actually real or not? And so basically, their philosophy is actually based upon the ideas of secular humanism. That is to say, that you have one shot at life, and because we have one shot at life, we make heaven on earth and not wait for the afterlife. And because that we have one shot at life, that means that humans need to help other humans as soon as possible whenever there's actually a natural disaster or some sort of tragedy that actually occur. And so the response to the idea of stance versus prayer is largely based upon the idea that we need to do things ASAP and not wait for things to actually happen. And I actually agree with that idea personally. It's a really good, noble idea that I also agree with. And also, it's a reaction to the fact that many politicians, they give out stars, they give out prayers, but don't actually do anything to help out the situation. And so that's kind of the reaction that many Democrats actually hold when it comes down to that particular issue. I don't believe in insulin. Woman replaces grandma medication with prayers and supplements, leading to fatal consequences. Kansas L. Sheehan, a 38-year-old nurse from Wisconsin, was sentenced to 9 months in prison, followed by 6 years of probation for the neglectful death of her 80-year-old grandmother. The case stemmed from Shilham's decision to replace her grandmother's prescribed diabetes medication, consistently mainly of insulin, with supplements she sold online and prayers which she torched on social media. This comes directly from the Los Angeles Times. Largest study of prayer to date finds that it has no power to heal. More than 1,800 patients were divided into 3 groups. Those who were told someone was praying for them, those who were told only that someone might pray for them and got prayers, and those who were told someone might pray for them but received no prayers. About 65% of the patients said they strongly believe in the power of prayer. 2 Catholic monasteries and 1 Protestant group offered the prayers. They were given patients' first names and the first initial their last names. The group started praying the night before surgery and continued for 2 weeks. All members of the prayer group recited the same intercession, asking for successful surgery and a quick, healthy recovery and no complications. Researchers said that they didn't ask family members of the sick people to stop praying because it would have been unethical to do so, meaning some prayers people receive more prayers than others. The results show that prayers had no beneficial effects on patient recoveries 30 days after surgeries. Overall, 59% of patients who knew that they were being prayed for had complications, in comparison to 51% of the patients who did not receive prayers. So when I hear the claim,
I saw the comments of my predecessor, Ms. Saki, and frankly, I think they're incredibly insensitive and disrespectful to the tens of millions of Americans of faith across this country who believe in the power of prayer.
That particular argumentation is basically an appeal to popularity, because the amount of people who actually believe that the power of prayer actually affects the world does not mean that the power of prayer actually affects the world. Although there has been studies like that one that shows that the power of prayer does not actually work, there is some sort of health benefits, because the power of prayer itself does not work, but health benefits from praying works. For example, if people were to actually pray, it's actually a form of meditation. and meditation is actually good for someone's health. However, although there are some health benefits from that type of meditation, it's also a placebo effect in a way. Because the main reason why it's actually a placebo effect is largely because a person has to actually already believe that a God actually exists, and because they actually feel better, it's because of their own personal well-being of what they were doing that made them feel better. And so for somebody to attribute that to God, they have to already believe that God exists for them actually to feel the effects of it. To sum up my own personal thoughts about thoughts and prayers is basically this. There's nothing inherently wrong if somebody wants to pray, but praying alone is not actually going to help anything unless you do actions behind the gesture. Because unfortunately, according to news, it seems as though that when it comes down to the Republican Party, they actually are in favor of decreasing the cost and spending for mental health issues, because many in response to gun violence say that it's actually the mental health that's causing people to go crazy. Well, if it's really the case that mental health is actually the main issue on why people are going crazy, why is it that we're actually lowering the budget for mental health institutions to actually help such people out? The final thing that I want to actually address about this particular issue is the fact that many people are also expressing concerns over the fact that there are many transgender individuals behind these shootings. Yes, it's actually really sad to hear that there are so many people who are transgenders that are also behind the shooting. There's no denying about that particular fact. However, it's important to point out at the same time that when it comes down to this data, that the vast majority of shooters have been white male, if not almost the vast majority of the shooters are white males for those particular cases. And so it's not necessarily a question about it's like an uptick of transgender shooters, but rather it's not that big in comparison to white males according to published data. I think I pretty much cover every single aspect for this story, but what do you guys think? Tell me in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.
It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler. It's everyone's friend, it's Tyler.